All right, Derek, almost exactly 1 year ago, you won Big Brother season 16. Has it all sunk in yet, or do you ever just think, oh my gosh, did this really happen?
It has sunk in for the most part, but there are moments when I'm watching the episodes and watching these house guests talk about the possibility of winning the show and winning the money, and realizing that I just did that last year. It is surreal, but it's pretty much sunk in for the most part now. I've had a lot of time to kind of process everything, but you do have those rare moments where you're like, it's pretty cool. I was on there last year doing this exact same thing, and it worked out pretty well for me. So it's a pretty cool feeling.
And many people consider you to be one of the best players in the history of the game, including Denton here. Denton won our contest last year at Gold Derby. He was predicting you to win, and Denton, you were predicting him from early on, right?
Yeah, maybe the third week, I saw how you were kind of pulling the strings around there. One thing I noticed that's a little different is that your season was very macho and egocentric. You had a lot of like testosterone in the house, and you were very good at feeding them lines to tell them how good they were and how many people liked them. And they were just eating it up and just knew that no one would vote for you if they took you to the end with them. And that's kind of what I see as the difference between you and Vanessa this season is people know she's good and should go. You were dominating and nobody knew until they were already in the jury house. But then they realized that you were kind of running the show. Did you get that impression while you were in there?
Yeah, I mean, my strategic game was to go in there and try to figure out people as fast as I could. That's it. It's about reading people. That's what I do every day. And before I even opened my mouth, I wanted to try to figure out and profile every single person in the house. And like you said, there were some people in there who really did like themselves, and I played into that. I played into that weakness of theirs, where they cared about what the outside world thought of them. They wanted to be the king of the castle, and I was all for letting them take that role, be the alpha male, because ultimately the only thing that mattered was winning. And I would agree with you as far as the comparison to me and Vanessa. It's just one of those things where she definitely is more vocal and more emotional and wears her feelings on her sleeve a little bit more. But it's working. It's working for the season. And one thing that I don't think anyone will argue with is, every season's different. And depending on the characters in the house, sometimes it just works. And even though if she had been this outgoing last year with basically saying, I'm the smartest person here, I think people would have targeted her because they wanted to be the smartest person. Whereas this season, people look at that and they want to work with her because they think it'll help their game. So every season's different. And I did what worked for my season, and there are house guests doing what's working for them in this season.
Hmm. And a lot of people this season aren't really doing what's best for them, but we might talk about that a little bit later. Even though you won, is there anything that you would have done differently, or are you so happy you won that you don't want to even think about any regrets or anything like that?
Honestly, how do I say this? I mean, I'm very happy with the way I played the game. I went in there in the pre-interviews with a strategy, and for the most part, I stuck to that the entire way. And that's all you can ask for, because most of the time when people go in there, they changed what they intended on doing the minute they get in there, because the game is bigger than they thought. And if you watch my pre-interviews and what I planned on doing by aligning with one person, kind of playing the background, throwing competitions, just kind of using other people to do my dirty work, I pretty much did that the whole game. But if I had to say one thing that I do regret, there is the fact that in the final two, the final three, I should say, I would have liked to win that final HOH, and maybe not for the reasons you guys may think. Cody and I are very close. We were very close in the house. I don't think people realized how close we really were if you were only watching the edited show. And then we're extremely close now, even closer. And he does get a lot of slack for taking me to the final two. But what people don't realize is anybody who isn't in that house, my game was to not let you know what I was doing. So in Cody's defense, he really didn't have a clue how much I was playing the jury management role up, and that was by design. So I would have liked to have won that final two, because I do think I would have beaten him. Obviously, I beat him without winning the final two. If I would have won the final three, I definitely would have won. And it would have been nice to take him and take that burden off his shoulders, because the outcome would have been the same either way, but at least he wouldn't have to deal with that. And as a friend, I would have liked to have done that for him, but that's just the way the game goes sometimes. I tried to beat him in the final one, it came down to the tiebreaker, and he beat me. There's nothing I can do about it. But that's the one thing I would have liked to change.
Hmm. Go ahead, Denton.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Cody picked you over Victoria, and all America said, "What are you doing?"
I know.
But yeah, that's nice of you. Um,
But
one of the other questions,
again, you're a gambler, and do you watch the feeds, then?
once in a while, not a lot, but
And I mean, you saw with the jury, they would all get into the jury and be like, "Oh my God, Derrick was doing that. Derrick was doing it," and Cody was no exception to that. I didn't give him any more of my game than anybody else because I didn't know what he was doing.
yeah.
So, in his defense, I never let him know anything. He was under the impression that him and I were doing everything in tandem. And
Well, I think also from a fan's perspective, at least from mine, I think most people wanted you to win anyway, so I was kind of just like happy that he did pick you because I thought you were by far the best player. So
thank you. It
congrats.
worked out the way it should because I thought Cody was one of the better players in the house, and he finished number 2. And he won a lot of comps. He did have a pretty good social game, and he deserved to be there. And I think it worked out the way it should.
What did you think about the Battle of the Block starting your season and going into this season? Do you think it serves a purpose? Is it a waste? What are your thoughts on that?
As a player, you can use it to your advantage. Obviously, I did. I think they started off with it. I think the intent was only to have it a week or two because I thought that they were going to try to do a different twist every week. But as we saw from Julie, they ended up switching it up because there was so much game going on. They did away with the takeovers because there was so much game going on. They didn't need to kind of, I don't want to use the word taint, but kind of influence the game because they were already playing. So I think the Battle of the Block intention in the beginning is to try to make as many enemies as possible by putting up 4 people. But as we realized, if you figure it out, you just put up the same people because now, as some people have said in the past, the blood becomes diluted. Everyone's putting the same people up. So they caught on to that. They did away with it. I love that they did away with it very, very early, and they just let the people play. So, kudos for them for realizing, being self-aware it wasn't working, and getting rid of it, and I don't think we'll be seeing it again anytime soon.
Mm. Have you gone back, or I guess I should say, as soon as the show ended, how quickly was it until you watched your episodes? Did you just sit down and marathon all of them at once?
I didn't do that. It was a couple weeks after because as soon as you get out, it's literally a mind. Well, I'll leave the last word out. You guys can do the math on what that is. But it really is. I mean, I was undercover for a long time. Nothing compares to being undercover for 100 days and being essentially in jail. You have no contact with the outside world at all. So it takes a couple weeks to really reacclimate yourself to life. Hey, you have a child. Hey, you have to cut the lawn. Hey, you have to go to work. So I spent a couple weeks just kind of getting comfortable with being me again. And then when I realized that I had some time and I had a couple nights, I binge watched it in 3 or 4 nights. And it was incredible. It was one of the most coolest things to do. I wish I could do it again and have that same feeling watching it, but once you've seen it once, it's gone. But to watch the edits, to see what was going on behind the scenes, to realize what I was feeling when they showed that specific part or when I won that specific competition, it was incredible. It really was incredible, and it was a lot of fun to watch. It was. And I watched it by myself. I just sat there and watched it.
What were you most surprised by? Was it something that people said in the diary room, or was it the way it was edited? Was there one or two things that you're that blew your mind?
One specific thing. As cocky as this sounds, pretty much had a good idea of what everyone was doing at all the time. And for the most part, I was right. There was one thing that I didn't pick up on, and that was when Hayden hugged Nicole and said, Cody and Derrick. Because if you notice, I immediately hugged her right after, thinking she was happy to be back in the house with me. So that was the one thing. Kudos to Hayden. He was onto it. He really was. He was the one guy who figured it out that those two, well, granted, we backstabbed them, a week earlier, but he knew it. And if Nicole would have won that HOH or Donnie would have won that HOH following that contest, we could have ended up on the block together, and it may have been a different outcome in the end. But luckily, we survived. But that was the one thing I was like, wow. I didn't realize the significance of that boxing HOH and how important it was for Cody to win that one. But that was the one thing that I was completely surprised by. The diary rooms and stuff, yeah, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. I could see that. But for the most part, I knew Christine was dogging us. I knew Zach was dogging us. you knew Nicole was the sweetheart. I knew Frankie was going to be very theatrical and over the top. You kind of expected it, you really did, but it's still cool to see. It really is.
Then you had some Frankie questions, right?
Well, I mean, what is up with Frankie? How was it living with Frankie? He was kind of the controversial person of the season last year that some people loved him, some people hated him. I think he thought everybody loved him and was maybe surprised when he got out of the house. But what was he like in there?
For me, it was a different experience than most people because I was forced to work with him very early on. I had an alliance with him, and you really can't break it when America's asking you to do it that early in the game. It would be a complete slap in the face to who everyone's voting. So I had a different experience with Frankie because him and I really got into the America's team, missions, and Donnie was doing them, but he wasn't as willing to go outside of who he was as a person to accomplish them. So there was a couple where Frankie and I had to step up on him. So we really collectively worked together to develop how we were going to do them, and then Donnie would just kind of go with it. And then there was the mouse one that we did when Donnie was gone. That was pretty cool. But as a person, Frankie is who he is outside the house. He's lived a very good life. He is accustomed to the finer things, and he doesn't shy away from that. So you can either love him for who he is or hate him for who he is, but that's who he is. And we're friends. Frankie and I are friends, and whenever you're in a house with somebody that long, you develop a relationship with them. It's that simple. You really do. It's a bond that no one will really understand unless you're in there. And outside the house, to be honest with you, thought Frankie really wouldn't talk to anybody. Honestly. I was like, nope, this kid's not going to talk to any of us. He's using this as strategy. As soon as we leave here, he won't even know your phone number. He won't even pick up for you. And it's been the exact opposite. When he was on Broadway, he invited us out. Whenever Ariana was in town and we wanted to go to a concert or whatever, we were backstage. He treats you like family, and so does an Ariana, and so does his mother. And Ariana's a big-time pop star. She's not some local, attraction. She's the real deal. And to get to experience that and have Frankie embrace us the way he has, I can't say nothing but good things about him. He is, like I said, he's always been straight up with me. He played a great game, hell of a competitor, and he voted for me in the end. So how can I really hate him?
Yeah. And switching gears to this season, we're down to the final 6. We have Vanessa, Steve, and John kind of on one side. We have Austin and the twins on the other side. Do you think this group of 6 people is stronger than your final group of 6? I really think everyone that's in the game now is really playing to win.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. You had Victoria in my season who really didn't know what was transpiring. Here's what I'll say. Strategically and game-wise, I think there's some more people that are planning and playing to win mentally. But as far as the competitions are concerned, I would say that we had a stronger. And this is what I'll say. I'll break it down. I was a decent competitor when I wanted to be. Cody, self-explanatory, very good competitor. Frankie, very good competitor. Caleb, maybe not the best game player, but who's going to knock him as far as competitions? The kid won a ton. And then who else did we have in the final 6? That's me, Caleb, Frank.
Was good at competitions.
Donnie, yeah. Donnie was in the 6, was he? Was Donnie in made 6 or he was 7?
Yeah.
Because Nicole ended up staying before him the second time.
Oh, yeah, right.
And Nicole, she kind of fell off near the end coming back into the game, but it's a toss-up, man. It really is. If you look at competition wins, we had more wins because Julia is probably equivalent to Victoria as far as wins. I think Julia has 1 POV win. That's it. Victoria had 1 POV win, so they kind of cross each other out. Vanessa's won 5 comps. I won 4. Caleb and Cody won 4 or 5. Austin's only won like 2 or 3. Steve, how many Steve won? Maybe 2 or 3?
Right.
Yeah, I think 3.
So as far as competition wins, we had more, but then you could make the argument that we also had the battle of the block a little longer. So that kind of pumped up the stats. So I guess it's how you look at it. I've heard both things. I've heard we had a stronger season up to this point, and I've heard many people say we hadn't. I think it's all personal preference. These people aren't kumbaya, I can tell you that much. They're not all playing together. They're cutthroat. They're going after each other way more than our season. That's for sure.
Who do you see? Who's your prediction to win?
It's a toss-up for me. You know, I'll be honest with you. I had a revelation yesterday because I write a lot for Big Brother Network, and I haven't really talked about this person a lot, and this will not be a popular opinion, but you know who's playing a pretty good game now that I think about it? Austin. And I'm going to tell you why. The
Mm.
fact that he's willing, I thought if you would have asked me, I would have bet $1 million on it that if he won that veto over Liz, he would use it on her because he was blinded by love as opposed to the game. But what he proved to us is he's here to win. He's here to win above all. He's in love with Liz, but he ain't willing to lose the game for it. And if you remember, very early on, he was supposed to go home, and they bought into the fact that he was going to throw the rest of the HOHs, and he would literally volunteer to go on the block every week, and they all bought it. Oh, he doesn't want to win. If he makes it to Final Two, he said don't vote for him. They bought it and kept him, and he was done that week. And he's come on strong. He's only been nominated once, so he has a very good shot. And then there's the obvious answer, which is Vanessa. Vanessa's playing a great game. She's been very consistent strategically all the way through. I think more people would be rooting for her if a couple things. One, she's very emotional, and her tactics are sometimes frowned upon by viewers, myself included. I don't like her, and this is you guys talk about betting a lot. I don't like her offering stakes at a casino because that's a tool that she has outside the game that she's bringing into the game. I don't like that. And what really turned me off was the HOH blog this week where she said she would not divulge any of her strategies until the season was over, and she released a series of strategical analysis blogs after the show ended. As a player and as somebody who is mostly considered strategic, it's very easy to match your strategy up with the way the show is edited afterwards. So I was disappointed to hear that, but those would be my two front runners, and you can't really take Steve out of it as well.
Hmm. Hey, do you think we lost Audrey too soon? Audrey was probably one of the most dramatic people we've ever seen on the show, and when she left, I kind of was sad a little bit because I want the drama. Big Brother, I come here every week for the drama.
Right, so you hated my season then, clearly.
I enjoyed your season a lot because you had a lot of strong people. Frankie won, Donnie, and Victoria had a very strong fan base. I don't know if you're aware of that, but whenever we would do a Victoria article, it would just get shared by thousands of people.
Right, can't forget Zach either, another strong personality. Yeah. As far as Audrey, again, as a player, I didn't really approve of the way she went out. I don't mind her staying in there and playing more, but she played very hard, very fast. So from a game perspective, I was surprised she lasted as long as she did. But for the people who like the dissension, the drama, yeah, I mean, of course you want to keep people like that in the game because that's what she was put in there for, to bring that. And I don't even know if the producers expected that, but that's what they got.
And then do you have one?
Do you think Johnny Mac will take Vanessa to the end?
Do I think Johnny Mac will take Vanessa to the end?
Do you think he would actually do that?
If he could, do you think? I mean, it's possible he'd be a fool to.
Right.
But again, it goes back to not knowing what somebody's doing behind the scenes. He doesn't probably know. When he said he was going to target Meg if he went back in the house, I said, wow, he really doesn't have a beat on what's going on in there. So it's possible. I'd like to think he'd honored his deal with Steve. I think he has a better shot at beating Steve. But there's a very good probability if he beats her and it's Steve or Austin and Vanessa. If it's Austin and Vanessa, I think he would honor that deal. If Julia's there, I think he takes Julia. I think all of them will take Julia if she's in the end. But, is she going to get there? I don't know. What do you think? Who do you think's going to win?
I said Steve and Johnny Mac should drop Vanessa for Julia before we started this conversation. So, I would say it would be smart to take Julia. I think Johnny Mac and Steve would be an interesting final two because I don't really know where the jury would go at that point.
Well, you said you picked me in last season. What's your opinion? Because a lot of people compare me to Vanessa. What do you think?
If I had to choose, I would say Vanessa is the likeliest winner. I had actually Liz for a while because she was sitting in a very good spot until this week.
Yes.
So Liz was my pick just because I thought Vanessa was too big of a target. But now it's closer than your season to me. It could go a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's where I think everyone is. I mean, Vanessa is without a doubt the favorite to win. But would I be surprised if Austin's sitting in the final two? No. Would I be surprised if Johnny Mac and Steve are sitting there? Absolutely not. So I agree with your analysis. It really, at this point, can go either way. I think the person who wins the next HOH could decide this game.
Hmm. Hey, real quick, what does slop taste like? The Big Brother, they never really explain what it is, and I've been wondering for years.
Yeah, slop is essentially the texture of oatmeal, but without flavor. So it's the texture of oatmeal without flavor, and then they throw in these horse oats. They're like a hard oat, and you're supposed to boil them down, and they become soft. But it's almost impossible to do. I could never do it, at least. So it doesn't taste bad. It's not like tough to swallow, but it just has no flavor, and the texture's not. It gets old after 2 days, of eating it, and you're on it for 7. So it's more of a flavorless oatmeal, but it doesn't have like a stench or like a bad taste where it's like, oh my god, I can't swallow this. It's just very bland, and it seems like no matter what condiment you put in there, whether it's sugar, honey, cinnamon, it just kind of gets overpowered by the slop. It really does.
Wow.
But if you throw a little, I found a way of putting chocolate milk in there instead, because you can use milk, and that tasted okay. But it's, again, chocolate oatmeal for 7 days, not a good combination at all.
And then wrap us up here. Did you have a question about if he would come back to the show?
Yeah, if they do an All-Star season again, would you come back, and is there anyone you'd like to see in there?
I would absolutely come back. I think it would be fun to go back again. The problem for me is going to be I'm one of the people that have a full-time job, and it's a job that it has a minimum staffing requirement, and it was extremely difficult for me to get on the show this time. Extremely difficult for me to get the time off. So it could be tough work-wise, and then family-wise, that's always tough. That's always difficult. Leaving your child and your wife for that long of a time mentally is very, very difficult. So I don't know. It's going to depend on everything else. But if it's meant to be, everything will work itself out, and I'll be in there. As far as who I want to play with, again, if I go in there, I want it to be worth something. So I want to play against the best players. So if I do win or I make it very far, it's not going to be the excuse, well, he didn't play against anybody. He didn't play against anybody good. Well, put me in there with people that are good. And it's also going to level the playing field, because if you put me in there with a lot of entertaining people who may have not have went very far, what are they going to do? They're going to vote me out first. Obviously, that's the smart thing to do. Let's be honest. The first time I lose a competition, if Will or Dan aren't in there, more than likely they're going to vote me out first, right? So I got to make it worth it to me. I'd like to play against the better players of the game and just see what happens. And if I go out first, then I go out first. And if I go really far, then it'll hold a lot of weight. And that's, as a competitor, that's what you want. You want to go against the best.
Nice. Well, thanks a lot for chatting with us. It was so great to talk to you. And I'm noticing the shirt in your background, the Hitman shirt.
Yeah, I keep it up. I do a lot of like You Now stuff, and I always keep that up, and just a little homage, my right hand Cody, So, yeah, that's my little shirt. It's my one
Awesome.
thing,
Well, great. Have a great day, and maybe we'll see you on the show in the future.
Absolutely, guys. Talk to you soon.
Great to talk to you.
Later, Den.